that may have bolstered themselves through the portal. I want to talk about Ole Miss because I don't think, like, other than when we interviewed Austin Simmons, and when we interviewed Austin Simmons, who's Ole Miss's rising starting quarterback, we were like, man, this dude's impressive. And of course, you and I saw him in person against Georgia last year and was awesome. So Florida State loses a lot of that. So they went out and got Walter Nolan. They got Princely Umanmielen on the line of scrimmage. They had Chris Paul, who was awesome last year, to transfer. Those guys were all gone. Jared Ivey, who'd been there for, actually transferred from Georgia Tech years earlier, but he'd been there. He's gone. A lot of the guys that we thought would be the difference that would get them into the playoff are gone. Jackson Dart, gone. First-round draft pick. I'm not sure they're falling off, Ari. Like, if we look at their transfer portal class, Ole Miss got a lot of the dudes that a lot of people wanted in the portal.
How many did they take this year?
They took above, north of 30, I believe.
That's right. I thought it was 30.
It might be right at 30. I think it's either 30 or 31, but it's a lot. And some of those guys are ones that we thought, if they wherever they wind up, they're going to be difference makers. Like Luke Haas, the tight end from Arkansas, was one that we thought would be a difference maker. Where, they had 32 transfers in.
32.
So, 32. So that's my question is, like, they got Deshaun Stribling, who was Oklahoma State's best receiver last year. Like, they got Keywan Lacey, the running back from Missouri. They got Princely's brother, Prince Will Umanmielen, came from Nebraska. So
it just feels right to have one of those guys on the team, doesn't it? There's
a third brother too, by the way.
Is he younger, and can he transfer in?
Eventually, yes. It sounds like they only want to have one at a time, but yeah.
That's great. That's good to hear.
But, like, we've sort of assumed that Ole Miss drops off here. I don't know that we should assume that.
I think the reason why people assume that is last year's transfer class had like 10 notable names that everybody knew.
Right, and it was these are the issues you really needed to fix. You went out and fixed them with these people, and now those people are gone.
And those people were recognizable coming in. Like, I know the names that you just mentioned, but like, there's no Walter Nolan in this class, right? Like,
correct.
There's no Juice Wells in this class, right? Like,
Luke Haas might be. He's a tight end, obviously. He's not a receiver, but he might be. Stribling, maybe.
He may be. He's not at this point in the year. Like last year when they got Juice Wells in June, it was like, holy crap.
Yeah. Caleb Odom from Alabama is the one I'm curious about, because he was one that the Alabama folks really loved when he got there, but they never really found a role for him. He's a big receiver. He might actually be a tight end, but he's 6'4", 220. So that's one that
Caleb Odom is
maybe, but that's another one of those. He was an elite recruit, but what does that mean?
Yeah, but I also think there's a little extra juice too when somebody comes from Bama, isn't there?
Is there though? Because wouldn't they just be playing at Bama?
No, if they were Ole Miss, I think that there's like a little extra for them to wind up at Ole Miss coming from Bama. It gives them a little extra juice. I'm not saying it just means that he's going to be good because he's from Bama, but I do think that there's like always an underlying motivation or underlying sweetness to that, I think.
Well, I think this is one that we may be underestimating this year, because you see Ole Miss kind of like hanging around in the top 20, near the top, near 20-ish with a lot of the preseason polls. I don't think anybody really knows what they're going to be. And the question with Ole Miss, and this is the question we've been asking since Lane Kiffin started there, and really kind of came in reshaping the roster through the portal, is, do they do this every year? Can they continue to be good while having this much turnover in the portal? Or do they have a year like 2024 Florida State at some point down the road?
Yeah. They have a really good quarterback, so my hope for them is that they don't have that experience.
Well, you and I think he's a really good quarterback because we saw one drive, but
I also
it was
think
a hell of a drive.
if Kiffin thought he wasn't a really good quarterback, they would have behaved differently in the portal.
That's true. They're not shy about going and getting somebody if they think they need
guy. They didn't get anyone.
Yeah,
well, they got Pierce Clarkson, by the way. I don't know if you remember that guy. That was
Steve Clarkson's son, the QB guru's son. Yeah, Pierce Clarkson was at Louisville. So
so I think that like they have a much higher floor than Florida State last year, but it probably looks to me like a 9-3-ish type team again,
which is weird. What if they're not? What if they're 10-2 and they make the playoff? Like the last year's team was supposed to. What if this year's team does?
I think that would be a nice little redemption arc for Lane Kiffin, because as much as I mean, like the thing that's so interesting is that I think he's a really good coach. Okay. And I think that your point is correct in that he has proven time and time again that he can take a transient roster and make it a functional unit. Like they play well together for the most part.
Yeah.
They blew it last year. There's no other
way. Did.
They absolutely.
That team, had it gotten into the playoff, could have gone very deep in the playoff and might have been one of the teams that could have competed with Ohio State.
I think that team playing peak performance, that team that we saw when they hosted Georgia, could have won the national title.
Correct.
Could have won it. Not just competed with Ohio State, could have won it.
I agree. They did. And the fact that they lost to Kentucky and lost to Florida is mind-bending to me.
And to me is a abject failure. And I hate to, when I say these things, people get mad but like, honestly, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you might be offended by that. But like, am I wrong? Like,
no,
that's like a real...
as Scott in the chat, and Scott's clearly a verbaler, a fan of our friends Dan and Ty at the Solid Verbal. Win your clunkers. Win your clunkers. And that's the part Ole Miss has to learn. That's the next step in Ole Miss's development. If they want to be an elite program, if they want to be good every year, you got to figure out how to do it. It's
almost like the opposite, because Ole Miss has really traditionally done a good job of winning the games they're supposed to, and then they would lose the games they're
right. And now like the Georgia game was the ultimate flip that on its head scenario, and then they go to Florida after an open date and lose.
It just sucks because in that stadium, you were there. We were on the sidelines at the end there. Like that was we finally did it moment as a program. And to not be able to cash that in with a playoff berth is just devastating. So if they were to get to it this year, I think that would make for a nice redemption arc, and like Lane Kiffin could hold his head high on that. I don't know that I buy that there's too many good teams in the SEC this year, I think, to go that far. But like, I think this leads us into